Chapter 4.
Okay, so when we look at the apo and the cone acetates, you find red has drawn the short straw. You know, they've got the ApoE4, which is no molecules of cysteine. The green are the ones who've got ApoE2. They're the lucky ones. Green people are much better, as we'll see, than the reds as far as their cardiovascular problems. They've got 2 molecules. And the blue people have got 1 molecule of arginine and 1 of cysteine. So they got the ApoE3. Now this allele, or genetic expression of an enzyme, is common throughout many enzymes. Many genes are like this. So you can imagine the same thing for a cytochrome P450 type, which would detoxify a drug. You know, a green person may have trouble with this. Green people are very chemically sensitive. But give the same drug to a red person or blue and they're okay. Okay, the green person has drawn the short straw. They've got like the ApoE4, but their expression of the cytochrome P450 is low. Okay, whereas for the same cytochrome P450 may be higher in a red and even higher in a blue. And so the same drug can be used, can be disastrous with one person, but okay for another. This is why you get drug reactions with some people and not others. Okay, so you think about it with every enzyme. If your enzyme was totally deficient, you probably wouldn't live, you know, with vital enzyme. Some you might escape, but generally speaking, most people will have such severe symptoms. So the majority of people just to have poor expressions. Okay, so you've got to make the best of that, and if it means leaving something out of the diet like lactose and so on, and life's better. If it means taking the right oils and the right vitamins and minerals, then so what? If you can optimize your health, which is what epigenetics is about. So now let's do the greens. So we don't know at this stage who's who, but look at your hands, okay, and have a look at them, and what you'll find is that the reds, remember, are long-fingered generally, very artistic when you look from this side, thinner, not necessarily thin, but thinner, longer fingers, okay? Adrenals are square, big spades, okay? That's why we make good osteopaths, because we love soft tissue. That's the difference, you know, Brian, between an osteopath and a chiropractor. We do soft tissue work. Chiropractors just manipulate. Okay, so we've got big square hands, okay? That makes us very good manual workers, and you know, we're good. Okay, the red is more good manual worker, but it's, you know, very artistic, very intuitive type people. But the hard workers are the greens. We are ruled by our adrenals. Okay, everything is adrenals, which is, and that, when I mean adrenals, I mean adrenal cortex. Mesomorphs we're otherwise known as, and pitta in Ayurveda. So the key feature of an adrenal is muscles. Okay, we're very muscular and a lot of intramuscular water retention. So it's easy for us to put on water and to lose it. Okay, so we can gain a few pounds one moment and lose it very quickly. It's water. Tend to be taller than the other types. So we're looking above 5'8" really for girls, above 5'7" probably, and above 5'8" or 9" for boys. So we are the giants, we're the Scandinavians, okay? When I teach around Scandinavia, Norway, we've done Sweden, Denmark, and more recently Latvia and Finland, they're almost all green, okay? Almost all of them weaken to green. So we know that that's probably the sort of area where, you know, greens emanated from originally. So they're more northern European, tend to be taller and strongly built, okay? That's why we were Viking raiders and pillagers, okay, because we were strong. The hands are square with tubular fingers about as long as the palm. The face tends to be triangular. Well, not in all cases. Yeah. Good resistance to disease and get well quickly. That's the story. You know, we don't get ill very often. We don't do illness. It doesn't come. Infections, you know. But if you burn those adrenals out, then you're in real trouble. But as long as you look after your adrenals. So we get very strong and get well quickly. They work and play hard. Okay. Beginning to recognize yourself? I hope so. Okay. Work hard, play hard. The thymus and thyroid tend to be their weakest glands and may suffer asthma and allergies. Well, allergies more with asthma are particularly the adrenal cortex, because our cortisol goes down if we burn out. And you know, the one solution to asthma and allergies is cortisone. So this is why we mustn't burn them out. The adrenals are stimulated by sodium and cholesterol. Okay, Cholesterol's the food for making the steroid hormones, and so crave salt and salty foods. We have to watch those salted nuts and crisps, or what in America they call chips. I can't stand it when they go to America and they call it chips. We have chips, and they say, no, they're fries. So chips, as we call them, are crisps, so those things flattened in packets. We love those, and salty things. And greasy foods. So you again watch the chips. Okay. They get stronger and stronger as the day progresses. So we're a little slow in the morning, but give us time, we build up. And those who stimulate their adrenals tend to drink alcohol in the evenings to relax. Well, that's our excuse anyway. We need to turn off and relax. They tend towards high blood pressure and some types of heart disease. They work well on the standard sort of Stone Age type of diet, the Pritikin diet, which is low calorie, plenty of fruit and vegetables, low fat, but good amount of protein. They're hardworking, intelligent, positive, and very sensitive. Temperament can be explosive. That's because the adrenals just don't push us. You know, we're very good, but if you push your luck too far, then we blow. Okay, late to bed and late to rise is the norm. Okay, so don't get us up too early in the morning. That awful thing about a 9 o'clock start tomorrow. You can tell he's not agreeing, can't you? Yeah, we want to party tonight, don't we? Do you remember those parties when we used to go out in Belgium? They used to teach years, didn't we, over in Belgium? Friday night was party night. I don't know how we ever did any work on Saturday. They were good. Late to bed and late to rise is the norm. Okay. So here's the big fella here, big hand. Fingers are strong, muscular with square tips. Palm is square, muscular. Fingers and palm lengths tend to be equal. Women 5'8" plus really, and men probably 5'8", 5'9" and above. Weight gain is all water, so it's a general increase of the water. Why do we gain weight with the water? It's the adrenals, but which hormone? Aldosterone, isn't it? So as aldosterone goes down, if we burn our adrenals, we hold on to sodium. So it's all to do with letting sodium go. We should hold on to sodium, and we will gain weight. And especially when we're hyper. And when we get hyper, our adrenals go overactive. And if we go overactive too long, we then burn them out. So in that state of hyper, we're actually producing more aldosterone, which holds on to more sodium. So to dilute it, we hold on to more water. When we're in a state of total exhaustion, we're losing water and losing sodium. So you lose weight. You know, if you've ever been under a lot of stress, you either gain weight or you lose it if you're a green. Everybody else stays the same, whatever, but a green will gain weight or lose it. Okay, very quickly. Other more familiar tendencies towards here, affinity to nickel. As I mentioned, you know, nickel might be a piercing. Could be a piercing with a person. Could be the ears. I've got a daughter, one of my daughters, a few weeks back, she got these marks all up her arm, on both arms, skin lesion. I said, oh, it's eczema. And she said, no, it's not eczema, because she used to have eczema. And she said, no, they itch and scratch. And she got a few scabs. And I said, oh, you've been bitten. And she said, no, they've just come up. And she was a red, wasn't she, Rachel? She was a red. And I thought there's something wrong here. She's too tall for the girl. She's, you know, taller than average. And for her age, she can't be a red. So we did the technique here, and we found, in fact, she was a green. And it was so obvious, just one look at her, she'd had her ears pierced. You know, and bang, you know, nickel straight in from the ears, straight out through the skin. So it's all staring us in the face, providing we know that the person is a green or a red or a blue, that they're truly those. And that's what we were doing by the time we finished. So remember, nickel. Require hyperbromide. So this is the killing chemical. So we love walnuts. Walnuts are a good source of bromine. Chemically sensitive. Sometimes we can be a nightmare. We should have remained as Viking pillagers, really, and live in the world 200 years ago. The modern world is a bit dicey for us because there's too many chemicals and drugs and things around. We don't take medicines and drugs very well. Our worst enemy, though, is solanine. You know, undoubtedly to a person, green person, if you have problems with potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, green peppers, all the Greek salad, You know, absolutely disastrous. If we go to Greece, you know, Greek salad is that. And, you know, at the end of a couple of days, you know, you can hardly walk, the muscles all hurt and so on. So what solanine does, unfortunately, is a poison. It's a toxoid, alkaloid toxin, and it inhibits the production of acetylcholine. So it inhibits acetyltransferase, choline transferase. So we don't make acetylcholine. So what happens if you don't make acetylcholine? You lose your parasympathetic supply, which is why your gut plays wrong and your neuromuscular junctions. And worst of all, your brain. Okay? So, if the British were to stand any chance of beating Usain Bolt, we should have given him chips the night before. You know? He didn't go to McDonald's enough. Okay? Clearly, we need to fill him up with solanine foods. Okay? More solanines for the greens. Okay? We obviously work with many of the other cyclists and things. That's how we beat them. And why do you think they gave McDonald's the sponsorship for the Olympics? So they give them the chips. But all our boys who are green were told, don't touch them. You go to Marks and Spencer's. Or Waitrose, wasn't it? Waitrose are in Stratford. Okay. So we're not really very good at solanine foods. So those are deadly for us. And sulfites, again, maybe more the red, because I used to be very sensitive to sulfites, but then I was as bang as a red. Now I'm probably much better than that, but I'm worse with potatoes. So, and worst of all also for us is cheese. Okay? And the worst of all the cheeses is cooked cheese. Oh.
I don't want to be green.
Now, cooked cheese, you know, Welsh rabbit or, you know, croque monsieur, those sort of things, you know, you're in trouble. And I know because I snore then. Probably snore anyway. But cooked cheese, instantly. If I don't have cheese, then I'm not so bad. But cheese, it paralyses your parasympathetics. And glossopharyngeal, which runs the throat, is all parasympathetic.
Cheese on chips would be out.
Cheese and chips.
Oh,
no, with tomato sauce. So we're not going to. Doesn't mean you can't have it, but just keep it really down. But it's okay with goat and sheep. Okay, so favour goat and sheep rather than the cow. It's the bovine one, which is the problem. Pritikin diet we mentioned is a very basic sort of Stone Age type of diet. Whole grains such as brown rice, starchy vegetables. Avoid as much of potatoes, tomatoes, green peppers and chili. Avoid cheese, especially cooked, as we said. Supplements. Okay, to a person, the green people need B1. B1 is thiamine, and thiamine deficiency seems to be much more common than I have ever imagined. Thiamine really only has a couple of places in the body where it works, but the main one is the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA just as we drop into the Krebs cycle. Okay? So to get that pyruvate across from the cytoplasm, across the mitochondrial membranes to get the Krebs cycle to work, we need thiamine. So people with thiamine deficiency are working more anaerobically. They can't spin the Krebs cycle to get the aerobic part. So this is why B1 is associated with tiredness, lack of energy. And that means you get a build-up of lactic acid, okay, because you're not getting rid of your pyruvate. So pyruvate shunts it to lactic acid. And lactic acid equates with pain. So this is your person who's in pain. So many people who are in pain have high levels of lactic acid, are actually just low in B1 because they're not getting rid of the pyruvate, so it builds up and converts to lactic acid. So we love our thiamine, okay? And you get thiamine from whole grain cereals, which is what they're recommending, and liver, okay? Good organic liver is no problem at all, but do get it organic. B6, we love our B6. B6 deficiency gives sort of flaking of the skin, flaking nails, and remember it's the cause of ulcers of all forms. So B6 is necessary to prevent mouth ulcers, stomach ulcers, varicose ulcers. Folic acid and B12, again hydroxycobalamin. And we love our choline, not inositol, choline. Choline is for making acetylcholine. If you don't have the choline, you can't make acetylcholine, can't get your brain to work. So this is when you don't feel right, you know, you sort of feel a bit gaga in the head, you can't remember things. It's your lack of choline. So we need choline. So choline is a vitamin B, like inositol, that you should make in your gut. But if you can't get it, you can take it as a supplement. It's rich naturally in egg yolks and in salmon. Choline. So why they always say fish is good brain food because of the choline. Minerals, strange here, very strange. We need boron. Boron, nobody really knows too much. They know it improves bone density, and they know it's good for postmenopausal women to convert testosterone to the estrogens. And it's now recognised in America, not so much over here, as an essential nutrient. Very small amount needed, 1 milligram, very small, but there may be many uses for boron over and above. Copper. And this is really interesting, and that confused me a lot, because copper shows up and so does zinc. And it has to be in the right balance there, about 15, 16 to 1 ratio, but it shows up together, and I thought copper and zinc never show, but they do, they're here. Selenium, again for the reasons we mentioned, conversion of thyroid. Selenium stimulates the phospholipase enzyme to change our old oils. It stimulates glutathione peroxidase, which helps us detoxify, which is probably why we have big problems with drugs. And silica, again, to build our soft tissues up. Okay, so those are the minerals which you always show with us. Oils, interesting, grapeseed. Grapeseed is a nice oil, but it can be a nasty oil if you buy cheap. You can buy cheap grapeseed in the supermarket, and it's called refined, and it's not really very nice. It's quite cheap, it's used a lot in the cosmetic industry, but to get cold pressed is very difficult. Again, I think Gilles came from France in the end, only because that's where the grapes come from. But of course they have to be organic, and so you have to get the byproducts of organic grape vineyards, so it's quite difficult to get, quite rare. Hazelnut, beautiful one, again very good with eyes, with visual problems. Lovely oil, again French. Peanut and sesame, the wonder oil which we first of all came up with. So this is very much the wonder oil, but expanded a little bit. And again, as was commented out, or with watercress for extra selenium in there. Herbs, rosemary, lemon balm. That's the detoxifier we talked about with solanines, so it's not surprised lemon balm comes up a lot here. And spices for us, again, ginger, cumin, and best of all is the star anise. Lovely, and I've been waiting years for star anise to show for me, so I was pleased when I converted to being a green that I could then take star anise. Okay. What? You don't like? You hope it, you don't like anise? Oh, I love anise. Give me a Pernod or ouzo on the rocks. Right. As long as you don't have the Greek salad with it, it's lovely. Okay. Rosemary and lemon balm. Okay. Good herbs and spices. So again, same rules, all organic, all in liquid form, and you can take them as spices and herbs culinary to use. Probiotics, where rhamnosus is ours. Lactobacillus rhamnosus. All lactobacilli mainly colonate the small intestine, and they tend to be aerobic in their function. Rhamnosus. Right, and finally, and then we can get down to the real testing. Finally, the blues, okay, dominated by their gonads. Ectomorphs, Vata in Ayurvedic. The key feature is short. That doesn't mean short and sexual development. It doesn't mean short sexual development, okay? These people are the opposite, okay? The key feature is short. The reason is the testosterone in the boys is kicked in early. With the girls, they're typically, as I say, think of the girl from the Far East. Okay, all Far Eastern people are blue. Classically Far Eastern body shape. Men tend to be shorter and stouter with soft muscle than the green person, but with ample body hair, often on the back. We didn't look at Andrew's hair on the back. Roll his shirt up and let's have a look. Go on, roll his shirt up and see whether he's got any. Has he got hair on his back? He has. What did he say? He's blue. Yes. But he wasn't real blue, was he? He was blue going red. Okay. So he was a little bit because he's a bit tall for a blue. Okay, that's what threw me when you said you were 5'10". You thought. I thought he's a bit. What? Yeah. Small hands with tapered fingers. So we saw his small hands with tapered fingers. Now pop your hands up and just have a look at them. You know, can I stick your hand up? Okay. What is it? It's a short fingered, isn't it? Okay. So that's the giveaway, is the short fingers. It's almost as if there's no distal digits. They're small, okay? Lovely petite hat. Not you, Gert. No, stick your hands up. No, yeah. Now Gert's are not gonadal hands, are they? Okay. What hands are those?
Green.
He could be green. He could almost be a bit of a red, but I think he's too tall for a red. But he could be, because he's lean. So maybe he's a tall red, but we'll see in a minute. Okay. Small hands with taper fingers, which are shorter than the palm. So the palm is small, but the palm is relatively bigger than the fingers. Okay. The hair is usually thick and can be coarse. Okay. Right. Skin tends to be smooth and elastic. Okay. Consistent physical fight with weight. And the reason for this, not for you, but the reason for this, not at the moment, Andrew. Your time will come. Okay. But it comes because of the estrogen. Okay. If the testosterone drops, the estrogen goes up relatively higher. But it's a battle always with the estrogens. Okay. And this is why they tend to go outwards, because they don't go up. Okay. Okay. Emotions tend to be even tempers and cool down quickly if angered. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Good. Okay. So all we've got to do is stand back for a little bit and everything will be all right. Tend to be positive and helpful. Nice. Are capable, industrious and loyal. Sounds like a good wife to have. Okay. Just don't upset her. Okay. So here's the male. Little bit, as I say, on the hairy side. A lot of Mediterranean men are like this. A lot of Italian men are like this, and Greeks, aren't they? Small hands with taper fingers, morphology, 5 foot to 5 below, 5'5", 5'6" and below. Weight gain classically is estrogen weight gain. Now, if you've done the seminar on hormones, you'll know there's 3 types of estrogens, okay? And the estradiol, or E2, is a weight gain generally all over, but particularly the breasts and the rest of the body. Okay, so if we do the ordinary shape of a well-developed woman, okay, a high estradiol was just an increase in that shape. So it's a general increase in the body fat, because estrogens distribute the fat. They don't make the fat; they distribute where it goes. Okay, estrone, or E1, which is predominantly the postmenopause, is all in the hips and the buttocks. That's the pear shape. Okay, so it's all here and here. And estriol, or E3, is all here. So this is the apple shape, as they call it. Okay, so the estrogen or blue person is going to put weight on here, here, or just generally all over. And that's the struggle that they always have with the estrogens. So they've got to really take care not only of their diet with the estrogens, but they've got to take care of xenoestrogens, or artificial estrogens. And unfortunately, these are in a lot of toiletries and cosmetics. So these are the ones who get the big malignancy problems. In fact, as I say, I've never found anybody who's got a malignancy or had a malignancy who isn't blue. But it does not mean that blue people get malignancies. Okay, if they look after themselves and avoid too many xenoestrogens, then they're decreasing their likelihood. As we'll see, you can do an awful lot, and particularly when we talk about prostate cancer tomorrow, to prevent. You know, do everything you can to prevent, and to be able to optimize your epigenetics and keep down to a minimum, you know, the triggering responses of estrogens. And one of the best ways to do is make sure that toiletries, cosmetics are as natural. You don't have lactose, you get all the mercury out of your mouth, and so on. All the sort of key features to help that. Don't eat too many pesticide foods, because pesticides are estrogen mimickers as well. Okay, so we know they have strong affinity to mercury, which makes these people very vulnerable to neurological problems involved with mercury. Okay, so for neurological problems, and you may consider this with a range of neurological problems, that it could be mercury is the answer. But what you've got to do is try and make sure you've got the right body type for the person to get the mercury to show. They tend to be low in methylene tetrahydrofolate, which is one of the coenzymes of folic, which is involved with cancer risk. So folic acid here, very, very important for this person to take. As far as I know, the jury is still out as to whether people should take folic acid having had the malignancy with chemotherapy. Some say you need the folic acid to prevent the polymorphism, the mutation, and others say no, you should inhibit folic acid, and if you inhibit the folic acid, you dry the tumour, you stop the tumour from growing, but unfortunately your hair drops out. So, you know, and they seem to get the same result. Do you still take Jeff Bland's work? Do you still take? Does he talk about that? I know he used to talk about that. You know, that it was even the research on whether you use folic acid or whether you didn't use it. So obviously it works for some people, not for others. B12, they always need, require hypochlorite for their immune systems. They more lean towards the lower animal proteins and make natural vegetarians. This person needs B12. So this is awkward, isn't it? Because how are they going to get their meat? How are they going to get their B12 if they don't really eat meat? Because meat is much higher according to the books than fish. Fish is higher than eggs, and eggs is higher than cheese, and so on. But really, if you muscle test, fish, eggs, cheese don't really build a person who's got B12 deficiency. The only food that will do that is meat, and it has to be red meat. And the best red meats are lamb and wild meat. So it can be venison is very good, wild boar, pheasant. But you don't need a lot of it. You know, you need sparing amount. Like the Chinese, eat protein, but don't eat too much in one go. Spread it out over a period of time. They react to lactose. I came across a case a little while ago, a few months ago, of somebody who had gone and had a stroke, or they thought they'd had a stroke, and gone gaga, taken into hospital, wasn't expected to live because they thought they'd had a brain stem clot, and was actually talking rubbish and seeing all sorts of frightening things occurring around them, and very distressing. This person was B12 deficient and was suffering acute hypoxia, probably in the basal ganglion. Okay, so they weren't getting the blood in there, so it looked as though they'd had a stroke, and was, and directly put on B12, absolutely fine, back home again. This person is about 6 foot something tall. No way, and he's a vegetarian. No way should he be a vegetarian. Okay, because it's not his body type. Okay, he's fighting against what is his natural. If he wants to be a vegetarian, he must have 2 foot cut off and decrease to less than 5 foot 5, 5 foot 6. You know, a smaller person it's more suitable, but a taller person, you know, needs B12. This is really, really very important. We know that the blue person is sensitive to lactose, which is why you never get milk products in a Chinese restaurant. Okay, so in other words, you can never get cheese or yogurt or ice cream served as a dessert, usually in a Chinese restaurant, because all Chinese and Far Eastern are lactose intolerant, because they don't produce lactase enough. Otherwise you get gut problems, you get bowel problems basically. And also, of course, lactose milk contains, bovine milk contains insulin-like growth factor. Bovine insulin-like growth factor 1 is identical to human, so it's a growth factor. So blue people shouldn't use cow's milk really very much, because A, they can't digest it, and B, it adds to the growth factor. So if there is a tumour growing, it'll speed the growing. It's a promoter of it. Now, they tend to be alcohol intolerant, which means that they don't have enough, they've drawn the short straw on alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme. Okay, that means they can tolerate bit, but sometimes people say, look, it just doesn't interest me. I've given up worrying about alcohol. I just don't bother because I feel so awful when I take it. Other people say, yeah, I can have a glass of wine, and other people say 2. And Andrew really struggles, don't you? You said 10 pints or something is your max. And then you can't Morris dance anymore. Okay. So, so there's all different expressions of it, but generally speaking, blue people are not good on alcohol. And this came as a big, well, we'd known this, but when we actually thought about it, this was a big surprise, because it meant really by using alcohol as a marker in the test kits, we were testing a person with alcohol, even though it had the frequency of something good or bad in it, and we found that when blue people put the complementary colour on, which is their complementary colour, they all weaken to everything in the test kit. And they're not weakening to the things in there, weakening to the alcohol in it. and all those products are 10% pure alcohol, pure ethanol. So what they're weakening to is ethanol. So their body is saying, don't give me any more alcohol, I can't do anything with it. Okay, so that's why we changed, and we asked. It was at a conference, a seminar I gave a couple of years ago in St. Petersburg, and some doctors there were talking about it and said, Chris, why do you use alcohol in your test kits? And I said, well, why not? Because it's stable and everything else. And they said, well, what about people who are alcohol intolerant? That's a fat thing coming from a Russian, isn't it? What about people alcohol intolerant? And I said, well, no. I said, well, what would you use? And they said, activated charcoal. And so the question was why? If you put charcoal under a microscope, it is hundreds of miles of surface area. It's just pitted around. It's amazing, and frequencies hold on to that very, very well. And they've been using it for some years over there with test kits. And so when 2 years later I discovered, oh, there might be something in that, we started making them. And they're real pains, aren't they? Bob knows all about those. His family are heavily, and Jane, you basically make them, don't you? But your daughter is the expert filler. And if anybody else would like a part-time job filling vials with activated charcoal, apply to Jane. You pay so much per vial, don't you, I think? Yeah, so a box contains 100 vials, so it's a nice cottage industry. The downside is it gets in your fingernails, it gets out your nose. Jill's daughter, Charlotte, she started doing it, but she couldn't take it in the end, really, because she was going to work the next day black. So it is a real, that's why the kits are time consuming. You know, we don't always, they go out like hotcakes, they go faster than we can make them. But we are gradually replacing and developing new kits with charcoal. So one day we'll have all our kits, everything will be in charcoal. The other kits are no problem at all, you can still continue to use them, but when you've got a blue person, you must use the ethanol inhibitor, okay, which is a frequency, the opposite or the complementary range of frequencies to ethanol. So we call it an ethanol inhibitor. And you simply, with the blue person, just stick the ethanol inhibitor on and just carry on, just pretend it's not there. Then you can use your alcohol kits. Right? If you don't, you're likely to find that people don't test positive. You're looking for a nutrient and you go through all these things and they remain weak, whereas they do actually need it, but the effect of the alcohol is stronger than the benefit of the nutrient that they may need. So it's worthwhile always remembering. And I forget sometimes, you know, I have a blue person and I forget and I use an old kit for something to test and I think, I forgot, that's why it doesn't show. So most important that you use the ethanol inhibitor if you use the alcohol kits. Tyramine sensitive. These people are sensitive to tyramine. Tyramine is an oxidized form of tyrosine. It is a very toxic substance. It's naturally present in tyrosine foods which are aged. So aged cheese is very important. Aged bananas when they start to go brown. Aged avocados. These are things which are high in tyramine from externally. And tyrosine, which has got into the intestine and is worked upon by bad bacteria, can be endogenously produced tyramine. So tyramine, when it gets into the blood, has to be metabolized very quickly. And it's metabolized by an enzyme called monoamine oxidase, which also metabolizes noradrenaline, dopamine, and serotonin. Okay? And it will oxidize, it will metabolize or oxidize tyramine in preference to those brain chemicals, which means that the serotonin level rises in people with tyramine sensitivity. Okay? And serotonin is a vasoconstrictor in the gut and most places, but a vasodilator of the mid-meningeal artery in the head, which dilates and gives the migraine. And that's what a migraine generally is a dilation of the mid-meningeal artery, which starts behind the eye and goes around the side of the face. And that's what the real true migraine is. So you'll find migraines, real migraines, occur in blue people. Okay? And it's usually triggered by something which stimulates the production of tyramine. Okay? So this is why the old things were the 4 C's: cheese, chocolate, coffee, and citrus. Okay? So those are the 4 C's they're called, and they're all rich in tyrosine and tyramine. Okay, so pesticides, again, very difficult, as I taught before. These are estrogen mimickers. Estrogen is the enemy of, artificial is the enemy of the blue person. So again, detoxify, but you must get the person as much as you can onto pesticide-free food. Okay, makes sense really, doesn't it? When you think of the world that people live in, it's the food is, you know, doesn't have the nutrients, but most of all it's full of chemicals, and you're ramming those chemicals into blues and greens. Reds are laughing, but the blues and the greens are really struggling in this world. Okay, diet, low animal protein as I said, but they do need animal protein really. Plenty of fruit and veg, no cow's milk because of lactose. Beware of old and aging cheese. So blue cheese is a classic one for that, for triggering them off. What was that cheese that you got in France? What was it called? What was it? Roberget. Oh, talk about what? Époise, that's it. Yeah, époise. Oh my goodness me. Yeah, talk about a strong aged cheese. What? It just contains tyramine. I think it's because the bean has been roasted and it's old, and the tyrosine within it must liberate it. But they always say think of the 4 C's. But I think the main ones, citrus is mainly orange rather than grapefruits, to be for sure. Chocolate, again, because of the cocoa bean is old, and coffee and cheese. Okay, those are the 4 C's. Plus add on the avocado and the banana when they're aged. Okay, when they're not aged, they're all right. But oranges. My mother lived to 95. She got shorter as she got older. We had to put her on a plank when took her out to a restaurant between 2 chairs to get her up to the table. She said, "You'll have to put me back in a high chair soon." But she was always about that height. And periodically, I can remember she suffered a migraine, and that migraine was a bed job. You know, when they're really bad migraines, you know, they go to bed, darkened room. And I could never understand it as a young boy, you know, why she'd gone to bed in a darkened room. So the fun was to go in there and turn the light on, you know, but not really understand these things, what it must have been like. And she eventually learnt it was oranges that did it, and chocolate. So, you know, very difficult for a woman to live without chocolate. You can live without oranges and oranges, but she found the hard way. And also alcohol. Some alcohol she could take, but she couldn't take very much. And so by doing that, eventually she learnt and she never got migraine. Okay? But now you can tell she was obviously blue. But she didn't shorten her life. She never had any tumours. She lived to 95 and had her brain, you know, right to the end.
With chocolate, just out of curiosity, this is what you said about the coffee, because they roast the coffee and then it becomes aged and it goes rancid actually as well.
Yeah, the oils are rancid.
So think of chocolate, if you egg roast chocolate, that is not chocolate.
Probably not. I don't know. The only way is to test. See, the trouble with chocolate and a blue person is it's got milk in it.
Yes.
Okay, to some degree. So you don't know if you put in dairy milk or something on a person what it is they're weakening to. Could be the sugar, could be the milk, could be the cocoa bean. But dark chocolate.
To make it easier for us.
Yes, of course. You'll find all sorts of excuses as to why you can eat chocolate. The dark chocolate is the secret, isn't it? Yeah, oh, dark chocolate's fine for me. Fine.
Raw can work, but it's
Raw.
hard.
You don't like raw
Well,
chocolate?
I like it, but it
Yeah.
doesn't. When you
Or
really
the dark
need
chocolate.
it doesn't do the job.
When you really need chocolate, you really need chocolate.
You need Galaxy. You don't need raw.
Galaxy. God. Brian, I don't suppose you have a craving for chocolate at all, do you? Yeah. No, well, but you're green. You don't have these. It's the blue people who have this craving, or the reds, because the reds, of course, need the sugar and things to boost them up to get them going. So, avoid the tyramine. Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking about affinity to Mercury, which would avoid deep sea fish. And yet, to get the hypochlorite for the blue, you need seafood.
You need seafood.
High mercury.
Well, yes and no. By seafood, I really probably mean more seafoods, you know, like prawns and so on. Yeah.
All the bottom feeders basically are very high in mercury.
Yeah, but you generally they reckon if you have fish once a week, it's all right. There was a news program a couple of years ago that said you shouldn't eat salmon more than once a fortnight. Okay. but that was not for mercury, that was for dioxin.
Yeah.
The poor fish, the mercury does nothing to the fish. It doesn't mind it at all. It just can't detoxify it. So it stores it, and it stores it in its fat. So the fat is where the key problem is. So if you grill or you bake it, it's fine. The oil drops out of the fish anyway. Okay? So it's the fish oil which is the problem. Oily fish and fish oil, which is the concentrate. And how they clean the oil is they centrifuge it basically, and they get it out to 99.9%, which is great. But you only need a few molecules of mercury once it's in the system, and as you probably know, mercury in the system will stay in the blood for 72 days. Okay, in the blood. 72 days once it's been put in. This is dental work that's done now. Mercury in the brain will be 27 years. That's the half-life. So most of you, once it's in the brain, will never get it out. Okay? 27 years. It's exactly the opposite. 72 days to 27 years. Cadmium is even worse. Cadmium is 36 years. But that's decreasing in the environment. But mercury isn't. Now we're getting... What? Well, you can get it up the nose, of course. That's why dentists were the biggest problem, because they were inhaling it up through the cribriform plate. But no matter how it gets in, it's difficult to get it out for blue people. Not a problem usually with green and reds. You know, and I don't highly recommend it, but on the other hand, for blue people, they need to watch it. Okay, that it is in the oil of the fish, not so much in the fish. And if you cook the fish, the oil drops out. Okay. Okay, they're no good either on artificial sweetness and artificial salt. So monosodium glutamate and aspartame tend to weaken. So, you know, just to avoid diet products, basically, and anything with MSG in it. And we don't say don't drink, but just watch it. And they'll tell you, you know, they know their limitations. You know, Andrew stretches his, just to see how his alcohol dehydrogenases. And if he tonight takes his vitamins with his bees, that you'll notice, he'll be fine. You know, he'll dance the night away.
Have you found any link between the blood group types?
No. It's sort of, there's similarities. But the blood group O, A, B, AB is only one way of measuring blood groups of hundreds. There's many, many different ways of doing it. And it doesn't fit exactly into that, nor do the blood groups, because then you talk about secretors and non-secretors and, you know. No, it is different. It fits more in with the Ayurvedic body types than anything else. The bottom line, you know, with all our type of work is muscle test anyway for the tolerance of things. You know, this idea that an A can tolerate that if they're a non-secretor and all this, you know, it's getting complicated then. It's not quite as easy as that. The bottom line is muscle test. But what you'll find is the old familiar things will be there, you know, tomatoes, potatoes and so on, for particular types, greens, and these will be there for the blues. So don't cut the alcohol out necessarily, but just, you know, as I say, expect that you can't have a high level of it. Supplements, again the same thing. We put in here 3 times a day, but it may not test for 3 times a day. It may only test for once. And when you test them, we cross-check when we do the practical against the three clocks as far as the breakfast, lunch and dinner. And if it's once a day, it'll usually always be breakfast. If it's twice a day, it'll be breakfast and supper or dinner. And if it's 3 times, then obviously it's going to be breakfast, lunch and dinner. Okay. So if it's only breakfast, then you only give it at breakfast. Now, B1, they love B1, again, B1 here. Folic acid, B12, and again, choline. Very important, if they're going to get mercury in the brain, they might as well keep the brain going as long as they can with acetylcholine. Okay. Now, notice one thing is missing there is B6. They don't need B6. Minerals, again, boron, bone density, postmenopausal. Magnesium, they need magnesium. Magnesium really comes in. Blue people love magnesium. Selenium, again, sulfur for their detoxification. They need extra sulfur. And zinc. Zinc, you see, comes up with everybody really there, universal. So that selectively is the blue mineral mix. So B1, folate, B12. You'll notice that B12 is almost in everything. So I think a lot of people are suffering B12 deficiency, and a lot of people are suffering folate deficiency simply because they don't eat enough vegetables, green vegetables, because folate is in the green part, so it has to be green. And what most people do is they take the green leaves off the food and then they eat the white bits, and they don't get the folate. Most folate is water soluble and goes into the water that you cook the vegetables in, which goes down the sink. Okay, so unless you use a gravy or something of that water, you've lost most of the folate anyway. Okay, B12. Why do I always say B12 is missing in the because of what? Chickens, isn't it? No, it's because of antibiotics. Okay, antibiotics kill the bacteria in the animal, and the B12 is made by bacteria in the guts, particularly of ruminants. Okay, so you need the good bacteria in there, and if you feed the animal antibiotics for any reason, it kills all the good bacteria. Okay. Oils, cold-pressed organic oils, flaxseed. Okay, here very important. There's a whole school of thought on flax oil with treating cancers, isn't there? It's a big German one. They eat it with cottage cheese and all sorts of things. Okay, pumpkin and walnut. These are all omega-3 rich foods. They need the omega-3s, but they need the omega-3s from the land-based oils, not the marine ones. Herbs, basil, coriander and dill. Chilies, spices, chilies, cinnamons and paprika. They like their hot spices. Okay, these are the hot ones. You don't have to have a lot, you don't have to burn your guts out with it, but they do like the heating spices there. So not too much of the jungle juice there. Casei, Lactobacillus casei, this is otherwise known as kaffir. This is an old Caucasian drink with milk which is curdled with a particular bacteria which is Lactobacillus casei. And it was originally, kaffir, there used to be kaffir plants, you used to be able to buy it in health food stores and things, kaffir, and it was very good for the gut and things. Beautiful probiotic, specifically for blue people. Okay, it doesn't... is it fermented? Oh, kaffir you mean? Yeah, this is not. Casei is the bacteria that does it. What I'm suggesting is people take casei. Okay, that's not fermented, that's the actual bacteria itself.
When you make it in your fridge,
You would make it as a fermented, yeah. It will ferment.
that's how you get it.
Well, I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just saying it is sold that way.
Yes, I just think it's obviously just a new way of having pepper.
Yeah. So what I would suggest is if you are a blue, muscle test whether it's tolerant because it's a fermented product. Yeah. Right, we went through those because we've done these times before with the spectroscopic emissions and absorption. We've talked about complementary colours. So whenever we test a person with a complementary for something toxic, we use the complementary colour. And when you test them for weakness, you use the weakening colour to see if they strengthen. All right, so that makes sense. Remember the golden rules: if something strengthens, it's good. If something weakens a person from strength, it's something which is harmful or bad. Okay, so that's always the golden rule. Okay. Both the weakening acetate and the complementary appear to function clinically more powerfully over the frontal eminences than anywhere else. Umbilicus is good, but even the frontal eminences beat that. This brain region has been implicated in planning complex cognitive behaviour, okay, personality expression, decision making, and moderating social behaviour. The basic activity of this brain region is considered to be orchestrations of thoughts and actions in accordance with internal goals. The most typical psychological term for functions carried out by the prefrontal cortex area is the executive function. In other words, it's where the executive makes the decision. So when we make a decision in life that this is the end of this part of the seminar and we're now going to have tea and coffee, that's my orbital frontal notches saying that, that it's a decision rather than just talking subconsciously. So let's go. 15 minutes.
End of chapter 4.